on this Tuesday morning, first day of October, folks.
Hello?
Already here, and I'm gonna tell you what, we got a great show today. Ron Higgins checks in Shreveport.
Hey, the show works.
Well, I know we were wondering where we were, but we got it worked out.
I know. That's your stressed out Rob voice. It's okay. I got you.
No,
we're good. We're good.
He's wearing the hat now, so it's good.
Everything's fine here, folks.
We've got Ron Higgins, Will Gunter over in Columbia. Big one this weekend, Brendan. Ole Miss travels to South Carolina. A lot going to be on the line for both teams because South Carolina's got one loss. Ole Miss now has one. Also, Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline checks in. Rodney Orr, Tider Insider. We'll bounce around, talk about all 16 of the SEC schools. Smash the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Allow notifications on your Android and iPhone. And as always, get pen and paper handy because class is in session. There's a lot to talk about, a lot of topics, and we're going to hit them today.
I'm going to bounce around like Lane Kiffin bounces around.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
Ron, thank you so much for your patience. We had some technical issues to work out. I'm going to tell you what, up in Memphis, remember, Ron, you lived here a long time. Tornado Alley through here. Every hurricane that goes out in the Gulf, Brendan, I'm going to tell you what, and I hope this one that's out there now doesn't turn into anything. But we did the show Friday, Ron, on the heels of that massive storm without a hitch. This guy's unbelievable.
Ron, I fly those planes right into the middle.
Sure he does.
When I'm not doing this show, I fly those hurricane hunters, they're called.
Monday morning, Monday morning, I was scheduled to go on a cruise. And my wife and I were like, you know what? It's not smart to take a ship and go toward a potential hurricane.
Yeah.
We're not going to lose hardly any money on this. And we looked around the room, took a vote, and said, who wants to go? And nobody, my wife and I looked at each other and said no. We said, hell no, we're not going.
Hell
yeah.
Hell no. They'll send them out, right? They'll send those cruises out.
They left. So they're I mean, and I was looking like, when Helene came in, we looked at they left port and they went out and they realized they couldn't dock in Cozumel.
Oh, wow.
And so they just kind of went halfway down, turned around. I'm like, I'm not getting in a boat and going in a choppy water and hurricane force winds or what tropical winds. And I'm not.
I can't watch college football.
We got college football, man, and you know what? Those storms, when you get out in those big waves, it's like most dangerous catch. That's when you're like, I will never do it.
I mean, the thing they do a really good job usually of avoiding storms. Then they really. I mean, I've been on like almost 30 cruises now, so I've only had like one where I thought was really bad.
Yeah,
they do a pretty good job of avoiding stuff. You look at what's in the Gulf now coming up, and then there's really nowhere to go.
No,
I mean, most time when you leave New Orleans, you go straight down to Cozumel, and it's a straight shot right across the heart of the Gulf of Mexico.
Yep.
There's nowhere to go. You can't cut across New Orleans to go to Key West. You can't go. There's nowhere to go. You can't escape this. And I so. I'm not even going to take a chance of this hurricane developing because we're supposed to. It's like a Monday through Friday cruise, and so I'm like, I don't want to do that. So I mean, it's an open date week for LSU.
You sing the Love Boat, Ron. on these boats. I think, by the way, I'm calling you out. I think I think you tour around and you do like a Frank Sinatra Love Boat, rendition on the Lido deck I had a grandfather actually that toured my mom's I guess her stepfather. He toured around back in the day, and he was a comedian. He went on cruise ships all over the place. That's where I get my middle name from. Sharp, Mickey Sharp.
Yeah.
God bless him. Good guy.
Well, Ron, speaking of this LSU off week, your takeaways from the win over South Alabama and what you see happening in the SEC. And there's, I guess, parity is a word we could use, but let's start with the Tigers. Got the open week, and then they come back and play Ole Miss. Ole Miss lost to Kentucky, who saw that coming, and now they've got to play at South Carolina in a game that was a lot bigger than people probably thought. So the Fighting Brian Kellys, in your opinion?
They've gotten a little bit better every week. I mean, they knew defensively they would be challenged. They got a new coordinator. They're playing a lot of, they're playing a lot of young people more so than people thought they would. But they've gotten better every week. I mean, they've cut down on the big plays. Defensive lines play pretty well. Linebackers have had to make an adjustment with losing Harold Perkins for the year.
God.
But I may be the only person in Baton Rouge who thinks this. And look, I like Harold Perkins. I mean, the kid works hard. He was like the Dixie Chicks song's "Goodbye Earl," which has a line, "He was a missing person nobody missed at all." I don't know what the hell he did this year. Don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, his stats tell me like run around too late to the play. I think they could. If there was a weakness with the new coordinator, he's still trying to figure out where to put Harold Perkins.
Yeah.
Because even in game weight, he's at 225. He still liked to play line. Look, most really good SEC linebackers, and I'm going off of a Saban deal. Saban would not really recruit a linebacker who's less than 240 pounds. He just wouldn't. Yeah. So you got Harold Perkins, who they want to play in towards the middle of the defensive linebacker.
Yeah.
But it's not natural for him. He works hard at trying to read defenses, and he's more of a react guy than read. And so that hurt him. And he got caught, here's a guy, even though he weighed 225, he's still outweighed by 100 pounds by most offensive linemen coming at him. So he had to deal with all that traffic. And so they tried to move him on the edge, which is where he should be. That was probably his best place. The guy's a great athlete. I mean, people ask me, what's he going to play in the pros? And I'm almost like saying, well, you and I can play this. He probably can play strong safety.
Yeah, that's right.
So he can cover people.
Yeah.
I felt bad for him, but I kept, all my media colleagues in Baton Rouge, their question to LSU defensive players after this game, talk about the transition to the LSU defense without Harold Perkins. It had to be a great, great loss. And all these guys are like, they're saying the right things. Harold was, obviously a big part of our defense. But I'm thinking, if he's such a big part of his defense, how come he was so friggin' invisible when he was out there? Because was he just basically removed by other offense? I mean, when they played running offenses in a 4-3, he was kind of effective. Other than that, anything else? But I think their defense has gotten better. Their offense is just, it's been really good. I mean,
yeah,
they found a gem and freshman running back Caden Durham, a 5-star guy from Texas who they knew was good, but they found him and he's been making plays. Nussmeier's been really good. He had a couple of dumb throws the last game, though. But it's like the last game for LSU was like a whole new thing for them. They never been up that big that quick. They scored twice on their first 3 plays of the game. So they never been up that big this year yet. And so Nussmeier for the first time this year kind of went back to the Nussmeier of 2 years ago. Hey, I'm going to take a few chances here, and he threw a couple of dumb passes. And Brian Kelly, I mean, after the second one, Nussmeier ended the first half for an interception. He tried to throw it off his back foot across the field, which was a stupid pass. But the second one to start the second half, LSU's first possession, was just he never should have thrown it. He tried to force it that wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so he comes up and Kelly just rips him. I mean, you can see Kelly. He's just into it. He's into him. You know, Nussmeier tries to walk away, and Kelly kind of grabbed his arm and says, "You know, coming back here, I'm not finished with you." And so I'm looking at this. I'm like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But you see these, God Almighty, these friggin' snowflake friggin' fans.
Yeah.
That should be corrected. I mean, he shouldn't have to yell at him. They should take that. That should be done in private to correct. Private? Where the hell are you going to go to the sideline? You could go to the medical tent and get on him. I'm sorry, guys are getting paid now.
Yeah, I agree.
Everyone these play, not everyone, but most of the stars, they're negotiating for money.
Mm-hmm.
So that head coach has a right to rip into his ass in public if he wants to.
Yeah.
It just pisses me off, these fans. Well, he shouldn't do that. And Nussmeier was fine with it. Nussmeier said something because, of course, he's the son of Doug Nussmeier.
Yeah.
He said, look, he goes, I was okay with that because I used to have my dad correct me very loud and very enthusiastically also. And he goes, Coach Kelly does a good job of pointing stuff out and correcting me. He was fine with it. I don't know. Do all football fans now just go to that place where it's like you see a coach screaming someone to the sidelines like that shouldn't happen. He should have been yelling at him. Do people understand that like this is like the most violent game you play, and you have to like take your mind and out of body spirit to another level?
Yeah.
And so you're going to have people screaming at each other. You're going to have players screaming at each other. So when a coach screams at a player and it's on camera, why is it something like, oh my God, he shouldn't do that?
I agree. Well, I agree.
LSU fans didn't have a problem with Nick Saban doing it.
Yeah.
When Saban did it, LSU fans usually like that because LSU fans want to scream at a player too. So when Nick was coaching LSU and a defensive back would screw up, and then they'd see Nick chew him out on the sideline, LSU fans were like, yeah, that's what I would do. Yeah.
Well, Ron, my deal is after the game when Hugh Freeze or someone like that kind of says stuff, I like to say just the coaches take it, but during the game, man, all bets are off because there's nowhere to hide, and I have no problem because I
don't have after a game. I don't have a problem with the coach saying that. I just don't. Okay.
Yeah.
A coach. No. I mean, if Hugh gets disgusted, look, it would help him to qualify to say I need to coach better because Kelly's always done that this year. I mean, every time he's been disgusted, even when he pounded his fist on the table, or if you get then it's basically guys have to do their job, do your job, nobody else's. And I don't know why they don't get this message. Maybe I got to coach better.
Yeah.
I think coaches now have a right to go after players a little bit. I mean, because they're friggin' getting paid now.
Yeah.
They understand these people say they're college kids and blah blah blah. All these college kids are negotiating for more money.
Yeah.
Okay. I think they got a right to. I think coaches have a little more right to be critical. Now, should they qualify it with saying take part of the blame? Say I should do a better job of coaching. I think Freeze had a right to say. I mean. I got to find quarterbacks who can throw the ball to our people.
Look, when you're paying somebody, you have a right to bitch about it. You know what I mean? You have a right to bitch when you're giving them money.
I want to get
that's just the way it is.
Ron, I want to get Will Gunner in because we're running behind. He's only got a few minutes, but I want to bring Will in. He covers South Carolina 107.5, the game over in Columbia, Ron. And I'll just say this for the record. When they're getting paid, as long as the coaches take blame too. But these kids, the days of them being 18 and 19-year-olds, that's over. And Will, the South Carolina game coming up, and I want to get you and Ron's talk about the SEC. Big one for the Gamecocks, Ole Miss coming in. And I think this is a game where everybody's saying, is this the old Ole Miss or is this the new Ole Miss? How big is this game in Columbia? Talk about the pregame action and what the Gamecock players and coaches are saying.
Yeah, and good to see y'all. By the way, Atlanta Braves hat, not in I dawned right as I saw my picture. I was like, oh, Atlanta Braves, not Alabama.
Well, you're in Braves country.
I popped up on screen and went, oh, maybe I should turn my hat around backwards real quick. Yeah, I mean, look, we started talking about it this morning. This is a monster game for both teams. It's a monster game for Lane Kiffin because of the expectations. And if you lose this game, you're probably, I mean, you lose, yeah, they got LSU in 2 weeks, but you're probably out of the college football playoff race, which is what the expectation was. And for South Carolina, you know, what we talked about this morning is even though you lost that LSU game, the month of September was really good. South Carolina built momentum. Even in a loss to LSU, they kind of turned some heads with how they played and some of the things that happened. And the fact that South Carolina plays Alabama down there in Tuscaloosa next week, if you lose this one, you're kind of staring down the barrel of a 3-3 start, and you've lost some momentum that you initially built. And plus, you got to go to Oklahoma on October 19th.
Yeah.
So, you know, for South Carolina, it's kind of one of those games where you look at it and you go, well, if you win this, all right, fine. You lose to Alabama. You're going to have another big one at Oklahoma, but maybe you keep that momentum going forward. But if you lose to Ole Miss, it's kind of a situation where the season, which started off good, could really get away with you because you'll have, again, Bama, Oklahoma, bye week, and then you'll get Texas A&M. You could say, man, September was awesome. October was brutally bad. So I think for different reasons for both teams, why this is such an important game here in 2024.
Ron, did you cover back in 2008 when Ole Miss went to Columbia? They were a top 5 team, and then the wheels fell off. I think a lot of people are saying, you know, is this Ole Miss team good enough to take that next step? What do you think is going to happen Saturday?
I've been looking at this game a lot. I mean, really, they were hard. I mean, you know, I think the problem with Ole Miss, and I go back to, how do you build a championship program now? How do you do that? And I think I agree something with somebody say what some coaches believe. You still build one through recruiting.
Yeah.
High school classes. If you overload a team with transfers, I just think it's hard in 1 year. You get all these new guys when, like, you know, they have like 25 transfers, and they're pouring in every year. How do you build chemistry automatically? I mean, it's something that, like, you know, it filtered from college basketball. I mean, for years, Calipari did it, and and people, you know, how do you build chemistry in one season? In football's even harder. You got more people. I still believe it. I still believe that may be Ole Miss's weaknesses. I know that, you know, the portal king, all that crap. That's fine, but I still think you build from high school classes, and you plug in players to certain spots where you feel like you need backup or you need a certain starter. But this wholesale, and so that's why I think Ole Miss, that's a weakness for them. I would say that's it. Look, the best team LSU played this year easily was South Carolina, and you know, if the quarterback doesn't get hurt early in the first half, I don't know if LSU comes back in that game. Honestly, I don't. You know, they couldn't figure out how to stop him. They finally did a better job of pass rushing, and LSU's offense woke up.
Yeah.
If South Carolina wins this game, it wouldn't surprise me. I just think that they're at home. It's a really loud place to play. I think it's underrated as a home field in the SEC. I think it kind of gets overlooked. I think since Beamer's been there, I think it's gotten better as a home field. It's gotten louder. There's kind of like this, I don't know, this pride back, and you got a coach people basically like. I won't be surprised South Carolina won this game. I mean, you know, Ole Miss is in a unique position, has to recover from losing a game at home. When you lose an SEC game at home to somebody that you're supposed to beat, that like just kills your soul.
Yeah.
And you got to figure out, I mean, if you're playing the next week, you got to figure out how to get your players back. A lot of times if you lose a road game in the SEC, you can write off to say, well, it was a tough
Life on the road.
Yeah, life on the road. When you lose a home game like that to somebody that you're a favorite over, it just eats you up, and that's what he's got to overcome this week. And Carolina's come off an open date, man. I mean, they had a chance to get ready for this one for 2 weeks. So I don't know. Something tells me I think the Gamecocks will play really well.
I do too. And Will, let's talk about that defensive line for South Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, they got to play better. As crazy as it sounds, they played good, but there's some flaws there in the secondary. They're not the best coverage team, and that can lead to some major issues on Saturday against a guy like Jackson Dart. That's what we just discussed when the LSU offensive line kind of got going in the second half. It opened up things for Garrett Nussmeier to make some big plays down the field, some key third downs there. And with Jackson Dart, it's going to have to be the same thing. I do think South Carolina's got to stay in a 4-man rush on Saturday with Kennard and Dylan Stewart. I'm really interested to see how Dylan Stewart bounces back. We've talked about 5-star freshman, phenomenal start to the year. LSU did a good job with him. And, that's the faced any adversity. Let's be honest, these 5-star kids, you come in now, you're facing 2 first-round picks there in Emory Jones, and I think it was Will Campbell or Will Johnson.
Will Campbell.
Will Campbell, yeah. Okay. So anyway, I get those two. But anyway, but the bottom line is he's got to play better. He actually got shut down, something he's probably never had happen since 5th or 6th grade. And so you look at these things. So that defensive line's got to play better. I did listen to Lane Kiffin talk a little bit about the differences in the defensive lines for South Carolina and Kentucky. South Carolina does not have that big run stuffer in the middle that eats up space. I think that's a concern. The interior guys are more lighter pass rush guys that can cause a lot of problems and are more quicker as opposed to Walker for Kentucky, who's the big, heavy guy. So they've got to play good on Saturday. You give Jackson Dart time, and it's going to be interesting to see what Jackson Dart does because I tell you what, you talk about a storyline. We talk about the transfer portal. People here are not happy at all with how Juice Wells, Antoine Wells, handled his situation transferring out. There's going to be a lot of hatred, and I hate to use that word, but that's going to be the true word used on Saturday when he comes into town. There's going to be a lot of people that don't want to see him get the football at all. And then I know Lane, knowing Lane Kiffin and then Juice Wells have the 10 or 11 reception game and 2 or 3 touchdowns so that Wells can kind of brag back because it is hate. What he did is probably wrong. It's probably wrong, but it's part of the new era of college football where you can basically hold yourself out with injury, collect your NIL money, tell your teammates and your friends you're coming back, and then the first opportunity you're in the transfer portal. And look, he hadn't been shy about it. He basically said, hey, I wanted to go play with an experienced quarterback. I wanted to win. It's not gone over well. There are a lot of people that will be waiting for his return and are going to love nothing more than to jeer at him if South Carolina's able to win the game. It's really interesting. But to your question, if South Carolina can't get to Jackson Dart and cause problems, there's a good chance that back end gets chewed up a little bit.
Yeah, and you can see, Ron, why it's a diametrically opposing argument. What he just said about Juice Wells, I want to go play for a team with a better quarterback and win right away. What if the 80,000 plus fans at South Carolina said, man, we're 2-2 or we're 1-3. We're going to go pull for another team. I mean, you can't have it. That's where, Ron, you're right. You're getting paid money. 18-year-olds getting $250,000. The days of there's somebody's 18-year-old kid, that's forget about it. The only thing I can say is, as a coach, just take the blame. But the players are going to be criticized because they're getting paid now. They want it to be like the NFL. Welcome to Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean that's part of it now. And so, again, I just think some of these fans should just wake up to the new day and like coaches have a right to, be critical of players, not to call them out by name. But they have a right to. Yeah. They have a right to be critical.
Yeah.
The one thing I think might help South Carolina is that Nussmeier usually if you look at the passing stats from Nussmeier and Dart, and both of them are 1-2 in the SEC in passing. Dart doesn't throw to as many different receivers in a game as Nussmeier does. Nussmeier usually throws to almost 10 or 11 different people a game. It'd be every game. Ole Miss is more like 5 or 6. There's not as many people to cover, or almost with the offense set up, or if Dart has like radar lock on certain receivers, maybe Trey Brown. But
yeah,
Nussmeier really spreads it around, and I think that's more of a problem taking on a team. If you look at the SEC stats, one of the things that jumped out at me was that among like the top receivers, LSU doesn't have Nussmeier's I think either leads the SEC in touchdown passes or is right there at second, but LSU has nobody in the top 10 in touchdown passes caught because everything is spread out with Nussmeier, and with Dart's it's a bit more a smaller band of receivers he throws to. So I think South Carolina, in that sense, that might help them some. It might.
Ron.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. We got to kind of see what exactly is going to happen. Like I said, it comes down to that defensive line. You can only cover for so long. It don't matter if you got 1 or 5 good receivers. If you can't cover one, they can burn you all day long.
Yeah. And Ron and Will, we got y'all for about three more minutes before we go into the Yancey Porter and Rodney on Ole Miss and Alabama. But while I've got you both here, first off, awesome back and forth discussion. And I got to ask you this, Will, with South Carolina, the team quarterback situation, what's the status? What is Lenora Sellers? Is he done for the year? What is it?
Well, he's listed as the starter on the depth chart. Look, you can't ever ask me those questions about depth chart because I had to go through the Will Muschamp experience of depth charts, where one time Xavier Legette was on the depth chart as the starter in 2020. This is a true story. 2020, Xavier Legette was on the depth chart the entire year as a starter, but wasn't playing. And when Muschamp got fired after the Mississippi game, Mike Bobo was the interim, and Mike Bobo got asked about Xavier Legette. He goes, "Oh, he's been out all year with a season-ending injury." So, and Shane's a little bit better than old Muschamp, but the truth is, Sellers should be fine. The expectation is him to play. The one that you're worried about is Rocket Sanders because he's only going to have had roughly 2 weeks to heal. His sounded kind of significant during the Akron game, but the full expectation is that Lenora Sellers should play. But again, as we talk on Tuesday, and Shane Beamer will talk here in about 3 hours, there's still a lot of healing that can occur Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Okay. We'll let them know how they can follow you, and Ron, do the same thing, and we'll do this again next week because I think this game, I don't know, South Carolina, Ole Miss, or Texas A&M, Missouri are the biggest games in the conference this week. That tells you in Auburn, Georgia, is like Auburn's a 24.5-point underdog. It'll get talked about, but it's a different world we live in. How do they follow you?
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. At Will Gunter on Twitter. And, of course, we are on throughout the state of South Carolina, right here in Columbia, 107.5 The Game, and 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach, and 100.5 The Game in Florence. And, of course, you can always, if you just want to hear content. We talked a lot of Mississippi this morning, but you can always download our app on your app store, 107.5 The Game.
I'm going to do that today. Thank you, man. Hey, Ron, how do they follow you? You're writing great content over there, Shreveport Bossier Journal. One of the Hall of Fame sports writers. So how do they keep up with you?
You go to Twitter at Ron Higg, ShreveportBossierJournal.com, free website, theronhiggins.com, free website. You can find me there. Me and my dog pick games every Thursday. So Skippy the Wonder Beachon has been hanging in every week. He was 6-4 last week. I was 7-3. He's been right there with me the whole year. He's been talking crap up to me all week.
There you go.
He's been doing his Ed Orgeron imitation. He keeps going. He passed me every day. He goes, "Hey, I'm coming for you, baby. I'm coming."
Yeah, I love it.
I said, "Shut up, Skippy. Just go eat." So anyway,
hey, Ron, I'll just leave you with this. I got a new idea for a column for you. Cruising with Ron Higgins.
Hey, I've sent college and cruise ships before.
All
I had.
right. I think you ought to cruise in with Ryan Higgins because you've been on.
It's funny. Well, it depends what port you leave from. You leave
Yeah.
from New Orleans, you have more of an LSU Saints crowd.
What's your safe word? I don't know about that cruise ship. It's freaking me out there. I'm gonna be a little crazy.
And then if you leave from Mobile, you get the Alabama crowd.
Yeah.
So I remember 2 years ago, I took a cruise out of Mobile before LSU played Alabama, like the week before. Of course, the Alabama fans were, their typical high obnoxious state of, like, yeah, I might work out with wearing something purple, the LSU shirt, and the guy goes, "You must be in Baton Rouge." Man, y'all ain't got a chance against us. I said, "Man, yeah, I know it's gonna be a tough game," and I don't. And then when as soon as Mason Taylor caught that pass to get 2-point conversion, the first person I thought was that big obnoxious Alabama fan and the sports bar, that shit going, just it's like shut up.
Hey, well, I'm going to tell you what, the SEC, you go anywhere in the world, you're going to run into other SEC fans. I love it. But yeah.
And they're all proud of their team. And I mean, and some I'd like to be less proud when you talk to them.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
You really would. But I mean, that's their team when they back them up, man. And
I agree.
Like I always say, Rob, the best part about Memphis for me was I got to cover the entire SEC. So I appreciated every school in the SEC, how they operated, their strengths and weaknesses, and their traditions. And that was the best part of working in the commercial field all those years, was I got to really learn the league. And so I respect the whole league and what everybody goes through in this league. Each school has different set of problems.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ron, that's why you're so good, because you have covered, and that's what we all grew up with, those sports writers, that they've been to all these places and you speak with such authority. That's why you're one of the absolute best. So let's do it again next week. As always,
thanks,
appreciate
Ron.
your time, and it's great content as always. Hey, your Yancey Porter going to be on here in just a minute, Rebel Yell Hotline. Let me say something about our sponsors. One of them in particular, Exo Armor. Exo Armor is producing equipment now. They use the 3D printers, okay? You subscribe to this service. You're a football team, an athletic team, athletic director. Tap on that QR code. Here's how it works. You subscribe to the service. You've got a 3D printer, and you're able to, if a player's injured in the first quarter,
it's
Yeah.
customized protection. So if you got a player, if you're somebody's hurt or the first, like in the game, so it's like, hey, I tweaked that one spot again or whatever in game. They can custom design it for that particular athlete. We all have different bodies. We all have the same ankles. I got skinny legs, Rob. I'm like 6'4". My friends always said, "Hey, I knew you were at football practice when we all did calisthenics and we searched for skinny legs." That was me. So not all protection wear and all that stuff's created equal. Yancey Porter just joins us in the we'll call it.
Yeah, and the thing of it, let me say this about Exo Armor. They're using, pro teams, college teams, high school teams. Get your players, athletes, period, get back into the game,
and
some real
not
time.
Just athletes. I mean, you can do, there's a million applications for something like this, right?
And it's in the research park down in Auburn. Dr. Michael Zabala and their team. Sarah Cooley is the marketing director out in Portland. So they are all over the country. They're going to be around the world. Proud to have them as a sponsor.
I like saying Zabala. That's a fun word.
Let me make sure now. Zabala. Yeah, Dr. Zabala is amazing.
Zabala.
I sent Rodney said he was having trouble joining, and I resent
I'll
him.
take care of Rodney.
Thank you.
He's here.
I didn't know what I
don't
did.
know
Here
why Rodney gets the VIP service. I don't know why he didn't come in directly. Rodney, what the heck? Oh no, I'll take care of Rodney. You talk to Yancey.
Yancey, my man from Vicksburg, but he grew up in Hattiesburg over in Forest County. Look, Yancey, last Friday, I'm picking the games with my son Wilson over in Charlotte. We love doing this. And I said, I think Kentucky's going to give Ole Miss fits and stay with them, but I think Ole Miss will pull away early. And then I said, okay. instead of I'm going to take Kentucky, then I said, no, I'm taking Ole Miss to cover. Well, we're watching that game. It's a perfect example of what you're going to tell us. Either you played easy teams the first month and got comfortable with that, and then Kentucky comes in and does with Brock Vandegrift things he doesn't normally do, like that 4th and 7 pass that he threw. But long season ahead, all of Ole Miss's goals are still out there in front of them. But you got to go to South Carolina Saturday. Your takeaways from the Kentucky loss and looking ahead, because you've got 7 more conference games to play.
Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of the classic case, as you just alluded to, playing the 4 Sisters of the Poor, to open the season, and stepping up to big boy ball, and they weren't ready for it. They weren't adapted. Kentucky was battle tested, and by the way, let's not take away from Kentucky. Those 2 defensive tackles that they have are as good or better than anybody in the country. That's quite a 1-2 combo down low, and that includes anybody from Georgia or Alabama or Texas as well. Those are 2 mammoth 6'6", 6'7", 350-pound guys that can move. So the Kentucky played a flawless game. They really did. Ole Miss was mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. It was one of those classic games where you see, like Miami last week against Virginia Tech. It's very debatable if they should have won that game, right? But they deserved to lose the game. They did everything they could to lose the game and still won the game. Georgia against Kentucky just a few weeks ago, where Georgia got beat from the first snap to the last snap, but won the game. You thought that's what was going to happen in this game, where you get outplayed, but you find a way to win the game at the end, and they didn't. They just from the turnovers inside the red zone, from Kentucky fumbling it into the end zone for the winning TD and recovering it, to the missed field goal, you could go on and on and on, and it was just the perfect storm, and Ole Miss couldn't win the game, and it's a crying shame. But like you said, they got to pick themselves up off the mat. This is the playoff era where you can have a couple losses now and make the playoffs, and they got to work on the things that they weren't efficient in that game, and that's mainly, as I've been alluding to since before the season started, is where is that big physical back going to come from? If you got a Quinshon Judkins in that game, they probably win that game something like 28-6, but they didn't, and they've got to make some personnel changes, I think, at center. He was overmatched, Reese McIntyre there, and running back with you've got Parrish and a walk-on running back playing second string, while you've got the SEC PPR leader returning this season, and he's got 8 carries in 5 games. Talking about Bentley, so
you listed Bentley the 4th, 5th, and 6th.
Yep. So there's a lot of curious things going on with some personnel issues right now at Ole Miss, and they've got to get those straight before this weekend, because look, South Carolina's two calls away from being undefeated and a top 10 team themselves. They're probably the most improved team in the SEC this year.
Yeah, and they really are. And I was talking with Ron Higgins in the segment right before you came on. Back in 2008, when Ole Miss went over there as the number 4 team and lost to South Carolina, and this is 16 years later, but nonetheless, it'll be a definitely tough matchup. Rodney Orr, Tider Insider, folks. It's only $48 a year. Rodney, I think I got you a couple of new subscribers last night at the Touchdown Club in Memphis. Lifelong Bama fans. I mean, hardcore. And I said, man, it's only $48 a year. Rodney's been doing it since 1996. Also, Tider Insider TV. I talked to Gary Harris, our friend, a couple of times yesterday. He called. We were just talking about what's going on in the SEC. Nobody outworks Yancey Porter and covering Ole Miss, and nobody outworks you and Gary when it comes to covering the Tide. Kind of a boring game Saturday night at Bryant-Denny. I fell asleep in the third quarter. I'm kidding. What you think? Let's talk the first game of the century of this season.
Yeah, tale of 2 halves, right? I mean, it was
yes.
Yeah, I really thought, to be honest with you, as I was sitting there watching the game, that when it was 28-0 or 30-7 there late in the first half, my thought was, okay, Alabama's one blow away from knocking Georgia out.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't get that knockout blow there in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
There were several things that happened there. They had the ball inside the 10 and they get the interception. They throw the interception there. They had some other things that happened that kind of, kept them from delivering a blow. But with all that said, I mean, then Georgia, Georgia's a great team. They did a fantastic job. Kirby made a lot of adjustments defensively, and they got into a rhythm offensively, which I was afraid of. I thought Beck would have some opportunities in the passing game, and they did. And so anyway, you saw what happened. Ryan Williams makes some incredible play. I mean, and then Xavier Brown comes up with the interception, two true freshmen. So it's just pretty amazing to the way it finished. And, to be honest with you, when you look at that game, sometimes you gain more out of the way that went than if you would have put them away early.
Yeah, I do. I think it made you play a full 60. Another question I have for you, and I talked with Gary, and you may have said this or Gary, Ryan Williams out of Saraland should be a senior in high school. We all know he reclassified. Father played at Auburn, yet he's at Alabama. He's, look, man, wow. He's, what'd y'all say? A combination of Deuce Palmer and Devontae Smith. We had Ellis Johnson on yesterday on the Monday Morning Blitz, reviewing and breaking down the games. And he was there when the Deuce was there out of Birmingham Jackson Olin High School. The wiggle and the speed and the power of Ryan Williams. What's he going to be like with a year in the weight room?
Yeah, no, I mean, he is a lot like Palmer was. I mean, he's probably the closest to Palmer in terms of, the way Palmer could change directions on a absolute dime. Now, he's faster than Palmer and he's bigger. He's taller. Ryan's a legit 6 feet, maybe a little over. And he doesn't look it. I know he doesn't look it, but I've watched him, been, 2 feet from him post game, and he surprised me a little bit with his height, but he's definitely got some height and that body control. It reminds me a little bit too of Devontae Smith in some ways. So yeah, it was just really phenomenal. That move. Literally, I'm sitting in the press box. I don't know if this ever happened to you, Rob, or Yancey, or Brendan, but I'm sitting in the press box, and you're watching the game. You're not cheering, obviously.
No cheering in the press box. You'll get
no
kicked
cheering
out.
in the press box. But I wanted Alabama to win. Obviously, you want Auburn to win. You wanted Auburn to win, and
Yes,
Yancey wants Ole Miss, and Brendan wants Florida.
Yeah.
So we're sitting there, and actually late in the game when this happened, with just over 2 minutes left, he makes this catch. Right, basically, a bunch of the media had already gone down to the field. I stayed up. I didn't want to miss any of the action. So when he makes this catch, the way he spun his body in the air, I don't know what overtook me, but I stood up. I mean, I'm standing up in the press box. And I mean, fortunately, I didn't yell or anything,
Yes.
But it was just a natural reaction because, and it wasn't so much, again, what it really was seeing greatness right in front of you. And I'm thinking, my gosh, is this really happening? Did he just put a spin move on both these guys and they ran into each other? These are 2 5-star players he just put this move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That it was an incredible play. We were watching it down at Lake Martin after the Auburn game. And it just, of course, Mallory, our oldest daughter, she's Alabama grad. She was all doing backflips and just going crazy. And so was Audrey, even though Audrey's a Vol because Mallory went to Alabama. So it was what a night. But I mean, that as far as TV, the ratings, I'm sure were off the charts. Yancey, looking, the way you felt Saturday, you're never out of a game after what you saw in that first quarter from Georgia coming back and fighting like they did. But what was it? Was it the longer the Ole Miss game, the longer Kentucky hung around? Did you sort of feel the energy being just sucked out of Ole Miss? And Ron Higgins brought this point up. I think Ole Miss has 25 transfers. It's hard to instantly gel, but what does Kiffin, what do these coaches need to do? You know the Ole Miss program inside out like Rodney knows Alabama. What do they have to do before they get on the plane or after a loss? Maybe they're taking the bus. Maybe they're mad before they go to Columbia. They wouldn't get there till Sunday if they took the bus, though.
Well, it all starts with the coaches, and they got out schemed and out coached, and the players got outplayed. I mean, they didn't adjust to Kentucky schemes. Kentucky did a lot of stuff they hadn't done all season long. There were some critical mistakes by Lane, and I'm sure if you gave him a church sermon shot, he would tell you the same thing. I mean, when it's 4th and 7 from Kentucky's own 15-yard line, and you're talking about a head coach on the other sideline that didn't even go for it on Georgia's 38-yard line at home, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the game, you call timeout there, and you get your defense prepared. And what happens when you see it all the time in the NFL and collegiate level, even in the high school level, when teams do that and the other team calls timeout, what happens? They end up punting the ball, right?
Yeah.
Because you're prepared for it. I mean, there were just a lot of mistakes from the coaching staff. Kentucky's those two mammoth defensive tackles who I think is the best 1-2 combo in the country.
Wow.
When they are terrorizing your offense like that, what do? You do a lot of quick hitters, a lot of bubble screens, misdirections when you get a defense firing off the ball like that. And what did Ole Miss do? They were throwing the ball 70 yards down the field, 5, 6, 7 Mississippi. So, they just played right into Kentucky's hands. And it was a poor job by the staff. But, hey, it happens to the best of them. It even happened to Nick Saban. But Saban would win those games, right? That you deserve to lose like that. And that's the disappointing thing from Ole Miss is they didn't win that game. So, it all starts with the staff, and then they got to make adjustments. They got to make some personnel adjustments there at running back. They got to get Bentley going. They got to make some changes, personnel there. I talked about at center. The other boundary corner opposite of Amos struggled a little bit there. Brandon Turnage was a safety at Alabama and Tennessee for a reason. He's not a natural corner. And, so they got to make some changes.
Yeah. I love the background noise. It's beautiful. It's a blue jay. I thought I heard a pileated woodpecker in the background, but I love that. Hey, let me Brendan, jump in if you can, because there's so many games this weekend, but what is the big one? Again, is it Ole Miss, South Carolina, or Missouri at Texas A&M? Because everybody's wanting to know, can Ole Miss bounce back, and can Missouri go on the road and play at a pretty good A&M team? But Alabama plays Vanderbilt in Nashville, a home game for Alabama. It really is. It is for most everybody in the SEC. But, Rodney, what up to this point, what kind of grade do you give Alabama? They're undefeated. They're 4-0, and they gave up a lot of points to Georgia, but they won. How do you compare this team to, say, the last 5 Alabama teams?
Oh, Lord. No, I think this team right now, I mean, obviously that was a huge win. It's probably the best win in college football so far this year, right?
Definitely.
I mean, Georgia's an incredible team. There's no doubt what Kirby and them did to, the winning mindset that they have. So that was a great win. What made Saban so great, though, too, was that after a win like this, he could manage this team. He could manage the next 2 or 3 games coming up. It's a grind in the SEC. It's a real grind. It's a week-to-week grind. And, so it's going to be interesting to see how Kalen DeBoer, which I have a lot of confidence in him, but, this is his first time through the grind, through the grinder, if you will. So I think it's going to be real interesting to see how they respond. Keep your feet on the ground and play with consistency. And I think that's one thing I'm really looking for.
Yeah. Yancey, speaking of the grind, I don't know. For Ole Miss, in the last 3 years, they've had a back-end loaded schedule 2 of the last 3 years. If I'm an Ole Miss fan, I hate that, because damn it, you're 4-0 and you're cruising, and no matter what the coaches say, we're dealing with 18 to 30-year-olds in today's world. I don't know, 18 to 23-year-olds. It goes in one ear and out the other. I got 4 kids. Trust me, Rodney. You do too, and Yancey. They don't listen like we think they do. But golly, Ole Miss still has all their goals like Georgia does that they set before the season. They're still attainable. But golly, you hate to think, what would a loss at South Carolina do to Ole Miss?
Yeah, it would be devastating. I mean, then you are, your feet are to the fire where you have to win every single game, win out, and that's a tough thing to do. But I mean, this is a very talented team. I mean, they're projected to have anywhere from 14 to 18 players drafted in this draft. I mean, it's a loaded team. They've got an issue there at running back. If you're not going to play your top 2 guys from last year, right? Quinshon goes to Ohio State, and Bentley is obviously been in the doghouse. That lane's got to let out, or it could get ugly. So,
why is he in the doghouse?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows. There's been, according to Lane, he's not in the doghouse. That there's 2 running backs, including a walk-on, that are just beating him out. But we all know that that's not the case. So they got to make some tweaks. I mean, losing to South Carolina would obviously be devastating. Then you're in the position again that you got to win out. They've got to go out there. They got to play well this weekend, right? It's not only about winning against South Carolina, but they got to get the mojo back. It's all about winning, right? We all know that, but they need to play well. They need to play like Alabama did that first half and really have some confidence and take that over to the next game.
Yeah, and you wonder, I had to ask the doghouse question. Usually it's because a running back isn't blocking or whatever. Like, why is ATN at Georgia, not having great success? And, I mean, does he like to block or whatever? Yancey, or Rodney, I got to ask you this. Jalen Milroe, from before the Texas game last year and then after the South Florida game when he did not play, is there a more improved player on the big stage of college football than Jalen Milroe?
Yeah, it'd be hard for me to answer because I just don't see all the things going on around the country, like I do here. But I'll say this, yeah, he's made some huge strides, obviously. I mean, he's made some huge strides with, and again, I want to be clear too. Now, Tommy Rees and Saban had a tough deal. They weren't sure what direction they were going because with the quarterback situation. And, when they finally decided on Milroe, they had a long way to go with him. They brought him a long way over the last 8-9 games, whatever it was, when he took over full time, when he took over. So they did a really good job of kind of setting the stage, I think, laying the foundation for where, DeBoer and Nick Sheridan have taken it now since the spring. And he's made some huge strides. I mean, they're continuing to work with him, far from a finished product. I think we saw that in the second half a little bit. And what I mean by that is, and not blaming Milroe, people get a little sensitive, but DeBoer and Sheridan have made it clear it's a work in progress. He's great. He's got all these great abilities to make those great plays, but Georgia goes zone a little bit, and sometimes there were some things he didn't see or recognize with receivers. Didn't show anticipation to make those throws. Guys coming open. So I think that's probably one thing that he needs to continue to work on, and they're talking about that. Sheridan even mentioned yesterday that one thing they were working on was him, and having that anticipation, throwing guys open, seeing those holes in the zone, whatever. So I think there's areas for improvement.
Yeah. Well, and I think I want to correct myself because I always go back to what you said last year with Jalen Milroe. Hey, did you see that? And then, did you see that? That I think that describes it because I mean,
He's getting a lot better at that, though.
Yeah, he is.
And I'll say this: there was a couple of times in this game where I knew you could tell he didn't know what he wanted to do with the ball, but he didn't just force it. You know, I mean, the worst thing that he could have done was force the ball, and he might have done that last year. He did it against Texas last year.
Yeah. When you start forcing the ball, you get in trouble. Yancey, Jackson Dart, his numbers have been off the charts this year, but against Kentucky, I mean, the whole team struggled. What do you look for him to do coming out against South Carolina in Columbia? Because you know that crowd's going to be amped up. I can't remember an 11 a.m. Central, 12 Eastern home crowd that jacked up. It's like they gave them all Red Bull and coffee when they walked into the stadium and then mixed it with alcohol. I mean, they were nuts. And you know, Ole Miss coming in is here it is. They didn't close with LSU, and now you know Shane Beamer's going to go. You got another chance. You're on the big stage. If I'm Lane Kiffin, I love a game like this because I think I've got my players' attention. Agree or disagree?
Well, certainly he got attention. You know, they're playing do or die. It's with Dart. You know, they've got to schematically get the ball out of his hands quicker if you're getting that kind of pass rush. Right now, South Carolina's a whole different beast. They've got two projected first-round picks on the edge, where Kentucky's got them down there, you know, right there over your center and guard. So the pressure for Kentucky is going to come up the middle. South Carolina's going to come on the edge. And again, you know, I mean, they're two questionable calls away from being undefeated in the top 10 team themselves against LSU there. You know, that they outplayed LSU that day. You know, they're formidable. They got to schematically change some things and not have Dart just running around like backyard football and just trying to make plays ad lib like Johnny Football back in his day. That's not really what he needs to be doing. And the second thing is, you know, Trey Harris has 11 catches for $176, and I believe the rest of the wide receivers had a total of 3 catches, and the rest went to the running backs. That's not Ole Miss football. Right? The last 2 years, Ole Miss has had 4 guys that have had over 40 catches. And this year, you know, they're all going to Trey Harris. So they got to start spreading the ball around. When the defense doesn't know who's going to be getting the ball, it's a whole different beast than when one guy is being keyed on offense.
Yeah, that's great stuff there because 4 different players catching 40 or more balls. That's not many teams in America can say that. All right, before we close out, I want to get both of y'all's thoughts. Rodney, give me your top 4 teams in the SEC going into, believe it or not, week 6.
Yeah, you know, it's a lot of, you know, again, that's real preliminary, obviously, still, in my opinion.
Well, that's why we're doing it.
So let me say this because I want to be clear. Last week, I do a top 5 every week. Last week, I had Texas 1. I had Georgia 2. The week before, I had Tennessee 2. But I had Georgia 2, Tennessee 3, Ole Miss 4, and Alabama 5. That was last week.
Okay.
So this week I went Alabama 1. They have the best win in college football right now.
Yeah.
And again, this is, you know, just where it is, my perception this week. All right. So then I had Texas 2, Tennessee 3, Georgia 4, and Missouri 5, I think it was. But, you know, could be South Carolina. Who knows? Like Yancey says, they're just a, you know, player 2 here or there from being undefeated. But, you know, that's just kind of where I have it right now. But you know what? Listen, I if you just look at that game Saturday night, I mean, again, it's a long way to go. But those Alabama, Georgia still might be the best 2 teams in the country. I don't know that, but, you know, they certainly could be.
Yeah, and I got to say, Give me your bottom 4 teams in the SEC, Rodney, before I go to Yancey.
Oh, Lord, I don't keep up with the bottom 4.
I said that because I just got a text from Scott Paulo, a great friend of mine who's an Arkansas alum. It's a T-shirt they have. It says, it's a Razorback T-shirt. It says, "We almost always win." I mean, hey, you got to have fun with it. Yancey, let's rank your top 4 in the SEC, because I know Brendan and I represent 2 of those teams right now that are down there in the dungeon, and it's a terrible place to be. But Yancey, give me your top 4.
Yeah, well, if you're just going off of the eye test and throwing out the records and stuff like that, I would go Alabama 1 right now. I would probably go Tennessee 2. I'd go Texas 3. And then there's a drop off in my eyes. The way that Ole Miss played after that, they definitely got bumped out of that category. Do I think they could end up being top 4? Most definitely. Are they there yet? No. Do I think Georgia could end up, in that top 3? Most definitely. But are they there right now? No. I mean, that first half, Alabama just absolutely dismantled them. They physically whipped them on both sides of the ball. They're not there, but can they be there like Ole Miss? Yes. I would probably, still put Georgia 4. Missouri is they could be just like Ole Miss right now, right? They've had a game or 2 that they should have won, but hey, they ended up winning those games, which you're supposed to do. And then there's another drop off, and you'd have to put Missouri there 5, and then I don't know, Ole Miss 6, just because what kind of team they have, regardless of that loss. And then there's kind of a drop off again to me after that. And then the bottom 4, goodness gracious. I mean, obviously Mississippi State would be last. Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, Auburn is such a. You just feel so bad for them, but just these last couple games, it just them losing those last 2 games is just kind of unfathomable. I mean, you can make a case for a bunch. I think Auburn's got the potential to be a lot better than bottom 4.
Yeah,
But you'd have to put them in there right now, and then. I still got a lot of questions with Florida, and then I don't know the other the 4th one. I mean, there's a bunch of just solid teams. I don't know
yeah,
if you can really put a 4th. Can y'all?
yeah.
Is there a 14 that sticks out to y'all in the bottom 4? Vandy. I mean, yeah. I mean,
But
yeah.
they're playing hard. I mean, they took Missouri to double overtime in Columbia. So yeah, it begs this
they've
question.
got 2 losses in the last second, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
and Brendan, jump
that's
in.
Tough.
Yeah, I want Brendan to jump in if he can, because I want to ask, 1 through 16, and this is a debatable question, but that's why you ask it. 1 through 16, counting Texas and Oklahoma in here.
Yes,
Brendan, I'll start with you. How good is the SEC? Is it as good as you expected? Is it better? Where are you surprised, on the upside or the downside?
I'm not surprised. I think there's parity, much as like what we thought would be in the league. I didn't think it would be this immediate. Here, wait. Let me reset, because we had this conversation several times. I talked about it when I was watching Mississippi State and Texas. And I keep thinking, why doesn't Texas close the door? Why don't they finish them off? And I thought, this team's a 1-3. These guys are no good. This should be a blowout. And then it just sort of occurs to me, and I thought, well, we all know that the hardest part about being in the SEC is playing in the SEC, is staying healthy, is getting through the gauntlet of the SEC week in and week out. You're like, God, this should have been like, Sisters of the Poor and Blind, and we should have been done. But some of these teams, they hang around and they hang around and they hang around, and it's like, oh yeah, well, Florida sucks this year, but God, you still got to go play Florida.
Yeah,
you're still going to get big dudes are going to kick your ass, and guys are you're going to get hurt. Every week is a battle, and I think that's what makes it so hard and unmeasurable. right? Because how do you measure that, sort of strength of schedule and all that crap? Because you just don't know what it's like to actually have to until you live it.
I think that's a great point, Rodney and Yancey, what he just said. You look at Florida, you still got to go play them. And they're a bunch of four. They're still number 9 on the blue chip index of talent. And guys, that's what makes this league. I mean, I don't think there's a more improved in terms of pound for pound, just badass than that Diego Pavia, the quarterback at Vanderbilt. I mean, he's tough.
He's
I think the
tough.
best player, just talent wise, is already. It looks like Ryan Williams.
Smart.
I thought it was Luther Burden III.
He's a smart kid too.
I think the bottom 4 is stronger than the bottom 4 has been outside of Mississippi State than many years. I mean, Auburn, Florida, and Vandy can beat just about anybody when they're on top of their game. And in the past, we've seen the bottom 4 that maybe were more in Mississippi State's line this year, right? Where everything would have to go right and everything go wrong for the other team just to have a chance, right? And I don't think you have that this year.
Well, and I call it like I see it. Auburn, they're 2-3, but they're getting close, but they're having to teach these kids how to win.
Oh my God, dude! You guys at Auburn are in denial. You guys suck.
Yeah,
okay?
but
It's like
they
being
don't.
at Florida. You guys are just a little bit behind us. Like it takes a while to get there, but like you got to fix it now because you suck.
Yeah,
and you're gonna be like Florida real soon, and you're gonna really suck. And then you got to rebuild, and you're not going to be like, man, I look at Alabama, and I sure wish that we had a Nick Saban that left, all the cupboards full of all sorts of wonderful little treats to play for Halloween or this time of year when they're gone.
You gotta learn how to win. That's the problem. And when you lose, in the case of Auburn, they go lose at Georgia Saturday. They're 2-4, and all of a sudden you're trying to hold everything together.
Everyone's got to beat Alabama.
Yeah, in Alabama, Rodney, you look at Alabama with Kalen DeBoer. You've been around him. He's doing the right things. It's the culture over there. And Rodney, catch Rodney Tyder Insider tonight. Again, I would say, I bet I know what you're talking about, Alabama football, but it's only $48 a year, people. Rodney Orr. Rodney, how do they follow you on social media? And Yancey do the same thing, and we'll tag out. And most often, we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world, people. Every day, find opportunities to bless others and find excuses to keep on winning. But Rodney, tag us out, and then you, Yancey.
Yeah, like you said, it's only $48 a year, TiderInsider.com. You can get access with your credit card right now, or if you prefer, there is an address there to send a check. And it's our premium information, our all sports forum. That's our community of Alabama fans there. And then, as you've always said, Rob, our TV show tonight.
Rod's better.
Rod Sterling.
I'm calling him Rod forevermore.
But awesome. Tider Insider TV tonight with Gary Harris, 6:30 live on WVUA 23 in Tuscaloosa, and then also as the replay tonight at 10:30.
Yeah, that'll be big. And Yancey, you can catch him, Rebel Yell Hotline, Monday night, 6 p.m. Sports 56 WHBQ in Memphis and all over Super Talk Mississippi. But you're active on social media too. Yeah,
just at Yancey Porter. I keep it real simple.
Oh, you're just real simple like that. By the way, you guys can't see it because you're our best guest that refused to come in on camera, right? Because you're like Charlie's Angels, like you guys.
I wish y'all would come in on camera. These guys
and like everybody else comes in on camera except you two, and you're our best. So our best weekly guest. And what you can't see is I just changed Rob's name to Rod on the tagline. So it's Rod, capital D, because that's how they do it wherever the hell he's from. Irish Catholic, SEC Southern, weird ass, whatever. Rod with a capital D, because no one knows why. With an E at the end, because no one knows why about that either.
It's Irish. We're
Rod
one of the
Brown.
14. Brown with an E is an Irish name, the 14 tribes of Galway. So
okay.
That's what
wait, listen.
But let me tell you something. Great show today, guys. Yancey, Rodney, again, I like to tell people when they're really good, they make great trial lawyers because you're always prepared. But look, folks, we do it every day. It means the world to us when you follow us and our guests. Allow notifications on your Android and iPhone. We'll send you an automatic link every day. Got a great show tomorrow. We've got Mildred will be on the show with us tomorrow. Ronnie Sanders checks in the first segment. We've also got other great guests tomorrow.
Say goodbye,
Dan Williams, who played at Tennessee.
Say goodbye,
Vince
Rod.
Ferrara.
Rod.
Good night, everybody. Good morning.
Say goodbye, Rod.
See y'all tomorrow.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal and the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.